They thought she was just the quiet girl who kept her head down, who whispered answers when called on and faded into the corners of every group photo. But when his palm cracked across her face in the middle of the hallway, they discovered the silence had been a warning, not a weakness. What happened next would haunt the school for years. Keep reading, and subscribe if you want more stories that start with a slap, and end with a legend. T started like any other gray, dragging Monday at Franklin High. The kind of day where the rain streaked down the windows and the smell of wet jackets clung to the lockers. The kind of day where nobody wanted to be there, least of all Amelia Hart, the quiet girl who'd mastered invisibility. Her long black hair was a curtain that shielded her from the world, her oversized hoodie a kind of armor, and she had learned to keep her voice low and her presence smaller still. But if anyone had been truly paying attention, they would have noticed the way her eyes sometimes flickered with something sharp, something almost dangerous, before she pushed it back down again. She walked the hall with her usual small steps, clutching her books against her chest. When it happened, Jared Linton, the loudest, cockiest, most obnoxious guy in junior year, flanked by his shadowy crew of wannabe tough guys, stepped directly into her path. He'd been after her for weeks, not in the way boys chase girls, but in the way predators test prey. Small comments here, mocking questions there, a trip in the hallway, by accident, and now, with the whole corridor watching, he sneered, "Hey, mouse," and before she could sidestep, his open palm smacked across her cheek, sharp and echoing in the stunned air. The sound seemed to freeze everyone for a split second, but inside Amelia, something that had been locked away for years came awake. She didn't drop her books, didn't gasp, didn't cry. Instead she set them down, slowly, deliberately, on the floor, her head tilting just enough for her hair to slip and reveal the glint in her eyes. Jared laughed like it was a show, like he had just made his friend's day, but then Amelia's hand shot out faster than anyone could register, fingers latching onto his wrist, and with a twist so precise it looked rehearsed. There was a sickening pop. His elbow bent in a direction no elbow should, his scream slicing through the hallway before the pain could even fully register. The crowd gasped, some stumbling back, some pulling out phones, and Jared fell to his knees, clutching the ruined joint. His swagger evaporated. Amelia just stood there, breathing evenly, eyes locked on him like he was something small and pathetic. And that's when the first twist came. She didn't run, didn't apologize, didn't even look at the teacher who was rushing down the hallway after hearing the commotion. She simply said, in a voice so calm it was unsettling, "You should be grateful it was just your elbow," and walked past him as if she'd simply stepped around a puddle. The teacher, Mr. Grant, a tall man with the kind of presence that usually silenced rooms, actually hesitated before grabbing her arm, and when he did, Amelia didn't resist. But she also didn't look afraid. In the principal's office, while Jared was being taken to the nurse, the questions began, but Amelia's answers were short, almost bored, like she'd rehearsed them, and when the principal tried to threaten suspension or even expulsion, her lips curled into the faintest smile. She knew something they didn't, and soon, everyone would, because that night, after she'd been sent home, a video of the hallway incident hit social media, but it wasn't posted by one of the bystanders. It came from an account nobody recognized, one that not only showed the slap and the elbow but also slowed down the exact moment her eyes locked on Jared's, and the caption simply read, "She warned him." They never listen. The comments exploded, some calling her a hero, some calling her a psycho, some claiming they knew her backstory, and that's when the second twist began to surface. Whispers that Amelia wasn't just some quiet bookworm, that she'd once been in something called the Ravens, a shadowy self-defense group run out of an old gym on the east side, where kids learned more than just martial arts. They learned how to end fights in seconds. Rumors said she'd been the youngest to ever master all their techniques, that she'd only left after the incident, though no one knew what that incident was. Over the next few days, instead of shrinking into the background like everyone expected, Amelia walked the halls with the same calm pace as always, except now, nobody stepped in her way. Even the teachers seemed more cautious, their eyes flicking to her like she was a storm cloud they weren't sure would break. Jared, meanwhile, came back with his arm in a sling and a face that had lost all trace of arrogance, but his crew wasn't done. Humiliation burns deep, and they wanted revenge. It happened Friday, after school, when Amelia was walking home through the alley behind the science building. They stepped out from the shadows, 3 of them this time, not just Jared's old friends but his older brother too, a guy in his early 20s who thought he was untouchable. "You think you're tough?" he growled, blocking her path, but Amelia only shifted her bag on her shoulder, her eyes scanning each of them like she was already calculating angles. The older brother lunged first, and in the blink of an eye, he was on the ground, gasping for air after she'd slammed her palm into his solar plexus. The others froze, just long enough for her to grab one by the collar and use his momentum to throw him into the wall. The third turned to run, but she caught his hoodie and yanked him back, sending him sprawling. The whole thing took less than 10 seconds, and she didn't break a sweat. And then came the third twist. From the far end of the alley, a slow clap echoed, and out stepped a tall woman in a long coat, her hair tied back in a severe knot, eyes sharp as glass. "Still fast, Hart," she said, and Amelia's expression, for the first time, faltered. The woman was Raven 3, one of the top instructors from her old life, and her presence meant trouble. "You've been sloppy," Raven 3 said, glancing at the groaning boys on the ground. "Too visible. We need to talk." And just like that, the quiet girl who had snapped an elbow in the hallway was pulled back into a world she thought she'd left behind. A world where every fight had a purpose, every movement had meaning, and every enemy was bigger than a high school bully. The next weeks blurred into a strange double life. Classes and homework by day, covert training and whispered missions by night. But the biggest twist was yet to come, because one evening, Raven 3 handed her a file, and on the first page was a photo of Jared Linton, smiling that same smug smile from before the hallway, and below it, a note. Target. Do not eliminate. Extract information. Amelia stared at it, torn between the simmering anger still inside her and the discipline she'd been taught. What information could Jared possibly have? The answer came like a punch. Jared's father was tied to something far bigger than Franklin High, a network that the Ravens had been tracking for years, and Jared was the loose thread they could pull. The slap in the hallway had been a spark, but now she was part of a fuse burning towards something explosive, and maybe, she thought, snapping that elbow had just been the beginning.